This is the Balanced Advisor Podcast with Dr. Travis Perry, helping financial advisors like you achieve balance in their lives.
All right, Blain, thank you for joining us here, the Balanced Advisor Podcast. I appreciate you taking some time. Just real quickly, introduce Blain Wease to the audience. Blain is the founder and president of Provincial Development Group, a Nashville-based professional services firm established in 2004. Provincial works with wealth management firms to equip their leaders to lead more effectively, build, scale, and realize sustainable growth. Welcome, Blain, to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate your work very much, and I know we've collaborated in the past, and always look forward to the chance to visit with you, and I always learn something when I'm interacting with you, so I appreciate that.
You're kind. I appreciate your time, Blain, and I know it's valuable. And I love what you do because we've talked about before, and we'll get to the end of the podcast about how a lot of what I do is one wheel and you're the other wheel, and we actually make for a really good bicycle to help advisors. So I'm excited to talk about that. But work-life balance, this has been my thing. I've been harping on this all year, and it's the year of crazy balance, upside down, especially for advisors who maybe haven't been virtual before, who've been at brick and mortar. They've done this forever, and now, whammo, they are stuck for something good. So before we get into kind of all of the rigmarole of 2020 and work-life balance, just curious, everybody has a different definition. And I've done 85 plus interviews of advisors, and I just love to know what your definition, what does work-life balance look like for you? How do you define it? How would you explain it to the audience?
Yeah. Well, I probably come to the table with a unique perspective as well, in the sense that I had a mentor in my 20s who was incredibly influential in my life. And he had this definition of balance, that the only time we're truly balanced completely symmetrically is when we're standing still. And so his point in saying that was that it's illusional to think that you're always going to be balanced or that's attainable, because you're not making any progress if you're standing still, right? So every step that you take, you're out of balance, but you're out of balance on purpose, and then you take the other step with the other foot, right? And that brings you back. And so what I look at balance is, and actually I've heard, I visited with Dave Ramsey, the financial guy, about this. He's someone I've gotten to know a little bit in Nashville, and he says this: there have been seasons in his life where he's worked 100 hours in a week. That was purposely out of balance, right? But that was for a book tour, or that was for a big media blitz, or that was on purpose to promote something. But on the back end of that, he might have booked 2 weeks off at Christmas, or left the office, by noon, because he realized that his family had not had much time with them. And so I think that is a more realistic view to recognize not every week is going to be in balance. But where it becomes problematic is if every week is 100 hours, or every week is a crisis, or every week you're maxed out in your work life so that you've got no gas in the tank for yourself, for your family, for your interests, for your relationships. And so that is really the foundation that has shaped my view of balance. And I can also say, in wrapping that question up, that I've experienced, a lot of imbalance starting a company because I needed to. I was not in a position where I had the luxury of being in balance every week, because there was one of me and I was trying to do something that had not been done before in our company. And so I can speak to this topic with some success and a lot of failures of feeling like I was out of control or booked more than I wanted to be.
Totally get it. And I love everybody's definition, because it's always different. And I think when I was writing this book, Achieving Balance, I have had some people, say, well, Travis, balance isn't this. And I think it's so much easier to describe what balance isn't, right? Versus what balance is. It's a 1990s term, work-life balance. What does that really mean? Is it life-work balance? Is it work-life harmony? Like there's all these different terms that people have used it. And I like how you describe it. And rightly so, from a guy who crazy successful. I mean, Dave Ramsey, crazy successful, regardless of what he teaches. And, we don't have to agree with all of his baby steps or anything to know that the guy has just been phenomenally well known, and he's gotten out there. And yeah, so I agree with that. If our definition of balance is just standing still, we're not progressing. And the whole company motto for at least for the Make Time Institute is live life on purpose. So, I mean, you're having purposeful growth. There's going to be times that are a little bit out of balance. You're going to step away. And isn't that what a vacation is? Like, isn't that the opposite? Like, I'm done with work. I'm detaching myself from responsibilities. I'm spending time alone or with family to, be away from all of this responsibility and have fun. That is in essence out of balance. Yeah. Yet there's this other idea, at least that you've kind of hit on, is that you're not going to have it in balance all the time. It's not always going to feel this way, which I 100% agree. And I like that. I appreciate you being so eloquent on that. So working with advisors, you probably see guys who are doing the 100-hour week, at least over 60-hour weeks constantly. And that kind of goes with your definition of balance. What do you think the biggest issues are for financial advisors? I'm going to preface this with financial advisors are notoriously horrible with work-life balance, 3 times more than the average American worker. Our financial advisors, working like workaholics would, 55 plus hours a week on average. And a lot of entrepreneurs, we can say they're about 72 hours a week. So, I mean, there's a little bit of I'm a independent financial advisor or working with the team. Regardless, a lot of them are running their businesses. So that kind of has this entrepreneurial flair, and that's kind of where you come in. I'm curious from your end, with working with so many advisors, what do you think some of the biggest issues might be?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, and I've given it a lot of thought. And I really think this is such a timely and relevant conversation that you and I are having for this reason. The whole premise to our company is that 98% of the advisors come to their advisor role without leadership training, without an executive background, without having started another company. So the whole origin of how they got to where they're at is the answer to your question, meaning they were a solo advisor, right? And then probably if they were successful, they had a part-time assistant. So that part-time assistant was doing some admin support, but they were still doing a lot. And then if you're very successful, you look up maybe 5, 10, 15 years later, and you've got a team around you, you've got other advisors, you've got complexity, you've got technology, you've got growth initiatives, you've got all of these things. But if you go back to the origin, the skill sets to meet with clients, do financial planning, investing, and all of that are radically different than the skill sets of running a company. So what happens is this: number one, human beings follow the path of least resistance like water. And the path of least resistance is your comfort zone, which means you tend to gravitate to the areas of comfort within client services and gravitate away from the leadership, the thoughtfulness, the strategy, the working on the business versus in the business, because that's not your comfort zone. And if you work there, then you're risking exposure of, hey, he's not very good at this, right? And so you've got this interesting dynamic. And so I think the biggest single thing is that when you drive a car, there's this magical little reminder on the dash that says oil change or service required in 1,000 miles. I just had mine come up yesterday, right? Here's the thing, Travis. When you're growing a firm, there is no dashboard that has a light that comes on that says, Travis, you've hit $100 million under management. Now you need to grow your leadership skills like this. Now you need to change this. Now you need to be more strategic with your time. Now you need to delegate more. There's none of that, right? And so unless you typically work with a firm like ours or have an encounter of some type that really enables that, there's no genesis for that transformation to switch, which really fuels this idea. And so it's a long answer, but you have to go back in time to uncover how they got to where they are to really, I think, understand the depth of why it's such a chronic problem.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I mean, it's a chronic problem. And you find that with FAs who are really good, financial advisors who are really good at what they do, this doesn't just come naturally. I think you hit on that. And so now they're balancing management and personal production. I see this a lot, even in, the big, especially actually in the big insurance companies, the big BDs that have managing directors, managing partners, mainly at the managing director level, where they're still producing personally and their leadership. And they're always asking me, well, Travis, what do I do? Like, how do I help my team and also my clients? And I find this to be true too, Blain, that there's such helpers. Financial advisors are helpers. It's a helper industry. And so they want to be there for everybody all the time. And they just can't. So they end up just working really long hours. And they got into this business thinking, flexibility, freedom, and financial, that's all there for them. They might have the financial, but they don't have a lot of flexibility and freedom because they're stuck not being able to scale themselves. What do you see as an issue for these advisors of having to make this switch? How should advisors begin to balance their lives better? And obviously, you're coming from that other wheel of looking at business systems. So tell us, maybe from your experience there, what is helpful for new advisors, experienced advisors in leadership to maybe consider?
Yeah. So if you go back to my original premise of how they ended up there, what happens when you're used to doing something for so long and you're central to the operation, then what we term that, Travis, is being founder-centric. And literally, it sounds silly to say on this podcast, but literally, I've worked with founding advisors who have been in the business for 20 years who are still approving paperclip orders for $5 because they're so used to control. They're so used to everything flowing through them. It's almost a savior complex, but I don't think they intend it to be that. I just think it got there by default. So what we start with is very simple, and that is, Travis, what's the highest and best use of your time? And what can only you do? And the way that I help people reframe their thinking when we're working with clients is this. You have the ability to scale a firm, but you don't have the ability to scale the senior leader. And what I mean by that is, if you spend 6 hours a week doing admin functions that someone else could be trained to do for you, that is 6 hours that you're not doing what only Travis can do. And there's no way to scale that. So what you do is you get caught in a low level of thinking by default, unconsciously, with no one lifting your chin to say, Travis, what is the best use of your time? And then here's the secret, because you've got to leverage motivation. What is the unintended consequences of you functioning like you have? And then we start going through the list. And the list is pretty scary, right? We're not growing like we want. I'm feeling burned out. I'm not able to take care of my best clients like I used to, or I've got challenges at home because my family thinks I'm a workaholic and I'm never available. I mean, I don't want to take up the rest of the podcast on unintended consequences.
No, it's good.
But it's pretty prolific.
Sure. I 100% agree. I mean, this is what I'm hearing when I'm interviewing advisors. I'm hearing this. I'm hearing, I got into the industry for these reasons and I'm stuck.
Yes.
I call it the workaholic trap, because that's really what it is. It's this workaholic trap where you think you can beat it. And maybe it's some of that God syndrome, as you talked about. Maybe it's this founder-centric issue of, no, I got this. I'm better than everybody else. Like, I'm smarter than the average. I'm going to make it happen. And you get in not building those systems correctly, and you fail because you can't scale yourself. You can't copy yourself. You can't continue to build a business that's growing and keep up with it. And I think there's something about this control. I kind of want to go deeper on this one, Blain.
It's a big one.
Yeah. So talk to me about that. What do you see with advisors who maybe just, let's talk about the difference. Advisors that are able to give up control versus advisors who can't give up that control to scale. Because I talk about this all the time. When I work with advisors one-on-one or in groups, I'm working with them a lot of times to just find the sweet spot, find where they work the best, and then give up control of these other things and delegate, automate, and delete. Those are the three things, and it's pretty simple, but you think, but I really like doing this one, or this one is so near and dear to me for whatever reason. I had literally a client who is a multimillionaire who was still hanging on to a $7 per hour activity. And it's kind of like approving those paperclip orders, except he was doing it. It's like not just approving the order, he was doing it. And why? It was the control. So I've had the conversation with him and others, but talk to me, what does that look like? Control, someone's able to give it up versus an advisor who is just stuck with it. Like, what are some of the differences that you've seen?
Yeah. So two things come to mind on that we address. Number one is always, always, always control is a mechanism of fear. And so you have to, one of our premises for our companies for our work with clients, Travis, is that we are committed to working with the root causes of problems, not the symptoms. So control is the symptom, fear is the root cause. Well, fear is a much more difficult thing to address than control because you're dealing with the inner person, right? But you have to be able to get them to a place where you can help the light come on, the light shine on the fact that you're afraid. You're afraid to give this up. You're afraid someone else is not going to do it like you can. You're afraid of investing in a bigger team because you need to delegate more. Whatever the fear is, right? And so we have a very specific line of questioning that helps uncover that in a safe environment. So we're pointing that out not to denigrate them, but to help them get free. And they can only get free if they're honest. So that's the first part. The second is this, that leadership, a big part of leadership is the ability to delegate effectively. And back to the premise of 98% of advisors don't come from a formal leadership role before. They don't have that skill, right? They've never developed that muscle. And so for them, they might have delegated, someone else doing something 3 years ago, didn't communicate well, didn't set the person up for success, assumed they were going to fail, and then they do. And it's what we call a self-inflicted wound. And then they come back and conclude, Travis, hey, I'm never going to do that again. I'm always going to have a death grip on this task because I tried that once 3 years ago and it didn't work. And so it's learning, and this is what we coach them on. It's learning the art of delegation. How do you set someone up to succeed when you're delegating rather than fail? And then addressing fear. And those are the two biggest levers that we see around this issue.
So good. I see this all the time. In fact, fear is the last chapter of my book. What does fear have to do with balance? Like, you just nailed it. You just confirmed exactly what I found in my interviews, that a lot of advisors are afraid to give something up. And we go deep into fear, and I talk about it a lot because I help advisors on the psychological end. But I love that you talked about this concept, honesty. I want to go there for a moment. We hear so much talk about transparency, honesty, being your best self, being your natural self, whatever that, the term is. What does that look like? What do advisors really need to do to recognize this fear? How can they be honest with themselves?
Yeah. So two things. One is I have found, and admittedly, Travis, I'm biased, right? But most of the time, the financial advisor, who's that lead advisor, doesn't have anyone to talk to about these issues. So they can't be honest, right? Their spouse isn't in the business, so they don't understand. They're certainly not going to talk to someone who's their competition. They're not likely to be comfortable talking to anyone in their office, even if it's a partner, right? So you've got this sense of isolation. That's the first thing. And then the second is, which is my bias, and that is all we do is work with people like that. So we have this credibility. We have this earned trust coming in the door, in a sense, in that they know that we've been successful with their peers. And we're really good at asking hard questions in a way that leads to positive fruit. And so our experience and our ability to see around corners really helps us get to some of these issues in a constructive way, where they can see, this person isn't asking this to expose me. This person is asking me this to help. And if I want change, I need to be honest. And then the third thing I would say is that I'm not afraid to call them out. If I don't think they're being truthful, I'm gonna say something like, Travis, I'm not sure you're being entirely forthright with what you're saying. Let's approach this from a different angle, and then I'll go after it there. But I'm not afraid to say things like that, because our commitment to the client is this: we're here to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. You're not paying us all this fee just to make you feel good. We are here to help change, and change, just like good to great, change can only ever begin when we're dealing with the bare naked truth.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've studied change in my degree with human development and looked at behavior from every possible direction. And there's always some kind of mechanism for change in every theory. And you quoted a great book I have on my shelf, Good to Great. And yeah, this idea that you have to be completely transparent. So what you're saying inevitably is that in order to be completely honest, sometimes we're not honest with ourselves. We're not honest with our spouses, with, even with people at work. We kind of have this facade, but then hiring somebody like yourself can allow an advisor to have that sounding board, to be honest with them. And I do a very similar process, but having advisors hear what they say and repeat it back, and holding that mirror up is definitely a good exercise. So I appreciate that. The discussion on honesty, I think, really is about the honesty with who we are, about our behaviors. I have people track their time. I have them track their, what they do for activities, and that helps them to see that they've been dishonest with themselves, right? That they're telling themselves a lie of what they see. And I bet you do something similar. Let me move to the art of delegation, because this is truly an art. Once someone is honest with themselves and they're able to decide, okay, it's time to delegate these responsibilities and really truly act like a leader, what do you find is the mark of a good leader who can delegate? Like, what are those couple, 2 or 3 things you say, this is somebody who delegates really well, this is how they do it?
Yeah. So a couple things. One is that, and it sounds fundamental, but it's terribly important. You want to know why you're delegating in the first place and be super clear about that. Like when I delegate more, I had a meeting with my assistant this morning. I told her, I want to delegate more of this to you, and here's why. I need to extract myself from this so I can do this. So I'm super clear. So clarity on motivation is really, really important. The second thing I would say about that, Travis, is this, that there's two ditches. I believe that truth is held in tension. On the right is an extreme and on the left is an extreme. So here's what that looks like. On the right is, I am going to delegate with very little instruction and let you, quote unquote, figure it out. I had and I won't get into the whole story because it would take too much time, but in our discovery process with the client once, this client hated micromanagement. And what I discovered is he subconsciously, because of his hatred for micromanagement, assumed unconsciously that clear instructions equated to micromanagement. Mm. And so all of his leaders were telling me, I never know what he's really wanting from me because he gives me this vague set of instructions, and I'm uncomfortable asking him because I don't want to make it seem like I don't know what I'm doing, but I don't know what I'm doing. And then I would go to him and I would ask him about that same thing. Oh, no, I'm pretty sure I was clear. I'm pretty sure I gave them everything they needed. I want to get out of their way and let them go, right? That was a classic case of under communicating and assumption. On the other side is micromanagement. It's true micromanagement. And by the way, where we ended up on that is this. On the client is to be clear is to be kind. You owe it to those that you're delegating to be super clear about the expectations that you want. Micromanagement is micromanaging every step of how they get there. That's what should be left up to them. But the outcome should be clear. Okay. So let's contrast that with the micromanager who is questioning every step, who's laying out a map, who's treating people like they don't have the ability to think. So that's the other ditch. And what I really like, especially if it's a bigger project, is this. I'll tell you a general idea of how I would do it. And then I'd like you to come back to me and tell me how you would do it if it's different. Let's talk that through. Let's learn from each other. And then let's have you go try it. And then the first time I'm going to inspect it more closely. And then the second time I'm going to inspect it less. And by the third time, I want to just make sure that I'm checking the box to inspect what I expect, but I'm going to let you run with it. So it's a progressive, intentional process that I think we can always get better at, frankly.
Man, you dropped some nuggets there. I love this visual of under communicating, ditch and micromanagement ditch of trying to, if we get caught on one side or the other, it's like a nasty slice or, a hook in golf. Like,
yes,
you gotta nail it straight. You gotta hit it down the runway. You're gonna have a horrible time golfing. And I know you're a golfer, but I like that. To be clear is to be kind. It never dawned on me, but you're exactly right. Sometimes we communicate really clear, or maybe we think we've done something really clear, but those who are communicating with us are supposed to be taking that communication, aren't reporting back that they're unclear about it, right? Because there's that ego. There is maybe the lack of honesty from that employee. They want to do their best and be seen as best. So that's a really good point. I really like that you made that point. And then also this idea of giving a general idea. Advisors ask me a lot of the time, well, how do I do this, Travis? Do I go and do the task really good myself and then hand it off to somebody so I have all the steps? Or do I just hire somebody who I know is going to do this better and follow them? And I say, yes, because, it might work one way or the other, but I like your idea of this, maybe a third idea, having a general idea and then having them go figure it out and then talking it through. I've been, and I grew up in a family owned business where sometimes, man, it's like a family member. And now it complicates this because you don't want to ask a family member and be seen like an idiot outside of work too. But you don't ask. And so you assume, and that causes all sorts of problems. But having this general idea and being given those tools, that's something completely different than, hey, good luck, man. Go figure it out. Or
let me know how it goes.
Yeah, tell me how did that work out for you? Or here's every single blasted stinking step. And if you don't do it, you're chided. Because you might have a different flavor. You might have a different way of doing it. And quite honestly, you're hired to do that. You're not a robot.
That's right.
So you're going to add some flair to that can come back and say, actually, I figured out a faster, better way that works for me. Cool. I didn't have to do it. I really like that approach, Blain. That's just a mic drop moment. Just a awesome, just listening to you talk about that. Listen,
Travis, can I add one thing to that? This was monumental for me.
Yeah.
In a company, sometimes there's an R&D department, and then there's manufacturing. The R&D department operates under a different set of principles than manufacturing, right? R&D, you're gonna make mistakes. That's built into the formula. You're gonna figure out what works, and mostly by figuring out what doesn't work. Manufacturing is a totally different precept. You wanna eliminate failure, right? We want a 99.9% success rate. Here's why I'm bringing this up. If you treat the first stages of delegation like manufacturing, and not like R&D, it is the same error, flawed mindset, right? Because your goal is to start with R&D, right? It's to start with, hey, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to figure this out. We are researching and we are developing. But that's going to lead us to manufacturing so that we can get through this stage to get there. But if you don't start with R&D, just like in the real world, no car is built without research and development, right? You never start with manufacturing. And so the same mindset applies equally to delegation.
What a great visual there, because I am just seeing financial advisors who are now leaders. They have teams, they've got service and sales and everything in between. And yeah, they may be leading their team because they're used to doing R&D. They might be leading their manufacturing part, maybe their paraplanners or their assistants, how they would in R&D and vice versa on the manufacturing. That's brilliant point. Listen, I know you work with advisors all the time, and that's how we're able to get in touch and meet in the first place. If advisors want to get your help, if they realize that, hey, we're really at a high level, we're really successful, we're growing, we need help from somebody like you, Blain, where can they go to find you?
Yeah, there's three ways. The first and most comprehensive way to learn more about us is at Provincial Development, PROVINCIAL, development.com. That's our website. And we've got a lot of videos. We're very transparent about our process. The second is if they want to send an email, it's info@provincialdevelopment.com. And then maybe we're old fashioned, but we'll take phone calls. And if someone wants to just chat with us, they're welcome to do that. 615-591-3960. Again, 615-591-3960. And we have a complimentary discovery conversation. And the reason that we do that is we never want someone to pay us a fee unless we are absolutely certain that we can help them. And so we do a good amount of dialogue on the front end just to figure out what someone's looking for and whether we can be a resource to them.
Excellent. And if you're a good fit, what might that look like to help? What might an ideal client look like for you, or how do you help them? Kind of two in the one.
Yeah.
Same question here.
So we're unique because we're exclusively focused on the business components of a wealth management firm. So we don't do investing. We don't do financial planning. We're not a compliance company. We have 5 primary areas that we work in. Leadership, because we believe everything rises and falls on the quality and the application of leadership. Second is strategy and execution. Do you have a strategic direction that informs virtually all of your decisions? Third is team and culture. Because we believe in what you're talking about so much, we believe that you have to have a healthy way to engage your team. You have to have a healthy culture to make it the kind of place that people want to be at. So that's a big focus, which leads to a lot of the conversation we've had today. Next is client service and experience. How do you take leadership, strategy, and team and then create a truly differentiated client service experience to generate referrals and longtime clients? And then lastly, the funnest part of what we get to do is growth and brand. Because when you do all of those other four things well, now growth and brand become a tremendous opportunity to help more people and to get you in the driver's seat of being able to scale your firm and take your services to more people that would be helped by them.
Wonderful. Hey, this has been great. I really appreciate your advice today and really the nuggets that I've taken away. I feel like this is an MBA class on steroids here for financial advisors. This is really good advice today, Blain. You guys go to provincialdevelopment.com. Check out Blain. I know you're on LinkedIn. I know you're on social. Connect with him there. He's got some great videos every week. I know I've been watching them. I know you're currently working on Covey's book and how that relates to advisors. So he's got great content and he's the real deal. So please reach out to him if this is something you want to get help with. Also, those of you who haven't yet, definitely pick up the book, Achieving Balance. It's still in pre-order and as of today, but it's hopefully going to be launching very soon. So regardless of what form it's in, go to travisperry.com/book, pick that up, share this podcast with others. And thank you for being a part of this, Blain. I appreciate again, your time and your valuable insights.
Yeah. And thank you for the good work you're doing. And not only the difference that you're making on advisors' professional lives, but also their personal lives.
Thanks, Blain. Have a great one.
Thank you.